Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Omar Kassab, a master's degree student in the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. I'm from Egypt, but I came to Norway to make my master's degree in project management. The co-authors for the paper are Laedre, which is my supervisor in the university, and Brandon Young, which is my colleague at work in PNC Norge, the company under study. The topic of this paper is last planner system in an infrastructure project. Let's start with a small introduction about the last planner system. Last planner system was invented by Ballard and Howell. They took the lead for its development during the last 3 decades. The main purpose of the last planner is to decline the uncertainty and variability in workflow that have been neglected in traditional project management. Additionally, it helps to increase the predictability of activities. Multiple studies have been conducted to evaluate the implementation of last planner system in many construction projects, and that takes us to the next slide. Despite the fact that there have been multiple studies that have evaluated the implementation of last planner system, few studies have recorded the implementation in infrastructure projects. Furthermore, more focus has been given to improve the last planner system components and its integration with other systems, while less attention has been paid to the behavioral aspects of practitioners, despite its importance and impact on the process. The study fills this gap by examining the following research questions. How is PNC going to implement the last planner system in Minivika project? What are the challenges that arise during the implementation of last planner system? In order to answer these questions, the authors relied on 5 research methods: comprehensive literature review, participant observations, non-participant observations, semi-structured interviews. There were 6, and 2 surveys. Now let's talk about the findings and discussion part. Due to the time limitation, I will give a fast overview over the implementation process of last planner system in Minivika project. The researcher divided the implementation process into 2 phases, as indicated in this illustrative figure in the left-hand side. During the training phase, it was the responsibility of the trainers to train their participants on all the components of the last planner system, while the execution phase was where the facilitator took the responsibility from the trainers after handing over the system in the transition point. The implementation process was pretty much similar to what was mentioned in the literature, so we don't have to get into it again. The PEP meetings here is a term that was given to the weekly meetings, and everything was pretty much the same as mentioned in the literature, except for the follow-up sessions, which were suggested by the trainers to make sure that they understood the process. Now let's answer the second research question. There are many challenges that face the project during the last planner system implementation in the project. However, due to the time limitation, I will just describe 5 of those challenges. Firstly, the language formed a great barrier against the implementation process. Gathering almost 7 different nationalities speaking 5 different languages in the same room could result in some challenges. In the weekly meeting, clear commitments should be made, but if the language is the challenge, that could be invisible. To address this, at the end of the meeting, the facilitator should make sure that everybody understood what they committed by presenting those commitments to other participants in the room. Secondly, many newcomers started to show up during the last PEP meeting in the training phase. This formed a challenge as well, as the newcomers were not on the same level of the training with other participants. The introduction of the new participants, if not handled correctly, could change the atmosphere of the sessions and lead to some members forming a bad image of the system. It's a requirement to elaborate the system into greater detail for them in the beginning until they get up to speed with the others. Thirdly, fear of responsibility when making the commitments, mainly from lower level management, was also recorded as a critical challenge during the implementation. This seems to be conventional due to the lack of experience. The point here is to have a minimum level of experience inside the room in order to make reliable promises. So the attendance of critical participants, such as site manager, supervisor, and specifically the foreman, is always requirement to have the most reliable commitments. Otherwise, should a critical member not be available, preparation in advance with a representative such as the site engineer should be executed to ensure as many reliable plans as possible are committed to in the PEP meetings. Now let's move to the last 2 challenges, which are the most vital between the other challenges, namely participants' resistance to the system which happened during the training phase, and the maintaining of participants' commitment towards the last planner system during the execution phase. In Minivika Bridge project, resistance to change materialized during the training phase in many forms, namely the non-participation of some critical team members in purpose to the PEP meeting and disruptions by some of the participants during the training sessions. The resistance can be a result of doubt towards last planner system. According to the interviews and the 2 surveys, there are 3 root causes for the doubt. First, the novelty of the system for most of the participants. Second, broad experience with other systems, which makes it unnecessary to change. The third is troublesome experience with last planner system for some of them from before. So in order to minimize the resistance, you have to minimize the doubt. To minimize the doubts, every participant should be open towards the new system. And once the team was ready to know more about the system, a sufficient training was the responsibility of the trainers. The trust toward the system can gradually increase by continuously working with it and elaborating its benefit. Here in the left-hand side, we can see a figure which represents the relationship between the time and doubt on one hand, and the time and trust on the other hand. The doubt here is a doubt towards the last planner system and represented by the red line, whereas the trust here is the trust towards the system and other participants and represented in the turquoise line. The doubt towards the system should be decreased to the lowest possible point before handing over the system to the project team. The trust toward each other, especially when its participants are from different companies, like the case here in this case study, will be built with the help of long-term efforts. That's why we can see that the trust curve is flatter than the doubt curve. Concerning the transition point, the literature study didn't reveal any researchers that has already mentioned the importance of transition point. The transition point is very vital and should be chosen carefully by the trainers. At this point, the trainers should have received enough training by the trainers, otherwise they may easily deviate from the drawn path. After the transition point, there are 2 possible routes. The first is to continue on the same line and improve more and more as presented in the figure with the solid lines, the red and the turquoise, while the second is to deteriorate again as indicated in the figure with the dashed lines. So it's important to maintain the participants' commitment, and that is what we are going to discuss now. In order to maintain the participant commitment toward the last planner system in the execution phase, trust towards the system and between the participants should remain stable or even improved. This is where the responsibility of the facilitator arises. The facilitator should be cautious when using the KPIs, at least in the beginning of the execution phase. Regardless of the value KPIs add to the system, on the other hand, KPIs can act as a reason for shaming and blaming inside the meeting, and that can result in destroying and establish trust between the participants, and by extension towards the last planner system. Another possible measure which was suggested by the trainers was to implement the follow-up sessions to make sure that the implementation process is on the right track. In conclusion, by comparing the literature to this case study, infrastructure projects and other construction projects tend to meet similar challenges in the training phase when adapting the last planner system for the first time, despite their different characteristics. Additionally, full implementation by using all the components of last planner system, as mentioned in the literature, is not enough for a successful system. The behavior aspects of participants should be considered. Thirdly, well-experienced trainers are vital. They can define the transition point and give the participants an adequate level of knowledge. Firstly, openness toward the system is a requirement for all. Then the facilitator should help with maintaining trust by using KPIs gradually at the beginning of the execution phase. At the end, literature review conducted didn't reveal evidence of any research being done on the application of follow-up sessions by trainers during the implementation of last planner system and how these sessions can influence the process. It's therefore recommended by researchers to be further studied. Thank you.